The story of the 1958 Jefferson nickel is not only the story of a small piece of American currency, it is the story of a nation in transition. The late 1950s was a period of economic growth in the United States, a time when prosperity after World War II had reshaped American life. Suburbs were growing, highways were being built, and consumer goods were more accessible than ever. And in this period, the United States Mint continued to strike the Jefferson nickel, a coin that had been first introduced in 1938 to honor the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, whose legacy was tied to the founding of the nation and to the Louisiana Purchase, which had doubled the size of the country. The design of the Jefferson nickel in 1958 still followed the original artistic vision of Felix Schlegel, who had won the design competition 2 decades earlier. His obverse design portrayed a left-facing bust of Jefferson with the inscription, "In God We Trust," along the left rim, the word liberty. And the year 1958 along the right side. This portrait was meant to reflect Jefferson's dignity and strength, his intellectual leadership, and his status as a symbol of American democracy. The reverse depicted Monticello Jefferson's Virginia estate, a neoclassical masterpiece designed by Jefferson himself. Below Monticello appeared the word Monticello, and under it the denomination 5 cents. And then the words United States of America along the rim with E pluribus unum above the dome. By 1958, the nickel had already been in circulation for 20 years, and although the design had become familiar to Americans, each year's issue carried its own story. The 1958 nickel was minted at 2 different facilities, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint. The Philadelphia Mint coins carried no mint mark, as was the practice of the era, while the Denver Mint coins bore the small D mint mark placed on the reverse to the right of Monticello. Production in 1958 was significant. Philadelphia struck over 16 million nickels, while Denver produced more than 120 million pieces, making the Denver coins far more common. Collectors often turn to mintage figures as a first indication of rarity, and in this case, the Philadelphia strikes are scarcer, though neither is considered extremely rare in regular circulated condition. Yet the true intrigue of the 1958 Jefferson nickel lies in its condition rarity, because while millions were made, very few survive today in pristine, uncirculated grades, and even fewer display the coveted full steps designation. Full steps refers to the detail found at the base of Monticello on the reverse of the coin. Jefferson's neoclassical mansion has a series of steps leading up to its entrance, when struck perfectly and preserved without wear. These steps appear in sharp, full detail. Collectors have long valued nickels that show these full steps because they demonstrate both exceptional striking quality from the mint and careful preservation over decades. In the case of the 1958 nickel full steps, examples are exceedingly rare. Most coins struck that year failed to achieve a strong impression, leaving the steps flat or incomplete. And as a result, a true full-step specimen can command thousands of dollars in the numismatic market. The 1958 Jefferson nickel is also a window into the history of mid-20th century minting technology. Coinage presses of the time were powerful but often inconsistent, and the nickel-metal alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel was notoriously difficult to strike in full detail. This explains why so many nickels from the 1940s and 1950s lack sharp design elements. The mint's priority was mass production to meet the needs of commerce, rather than satisfying collectors who only later would prize details like full steps. The economy of 1958 itself offers important context. That year, the United States was emerging from a brief recession. Consumer confidence was rising, and the government was spending heavily on infrastructure projects. Coins like the Jefferson nickel circulated widely in everyday life, being used for everything from vending machines to bus fares to grocery purchases. At a time when a nickel still had real purchasing power, a bottle of soda could be bought for 5 cents, and a payphone call often cost the same. So the 1958 nickel was not just a collector's piece, it was a working part of American daily life. From a numismatic perspective, collectors of the Jefferson nickel series view the 1958 issue as part of the late pre-redesign era, because in 1966, the coin would undergo modifications to the portrait details to improve striking quality. But in 1958, Schlag's original design remained intact in its classic form. This gives the coin special significance as one of the last representations of the unmodified portrait of Jefferson in circulation before the mint intervened. Another point of interest comes from proof coins struck in 1958. Proofs are coins specially made for collectors using highly polished dies and planchets, which produce mirror-like surfaces. The Philadelphia Mint produced nearly 800,000 proof nickels in 1958, which was a considerable increase compared to earlier years. These proof coins provide collectors with opportunities to find beautifully struck examples. But even among proofs, the full steps designation remains highly desirable, since even proof dies sometimes failed to transfer the Monticello steps fully. The long-term value of the 1958 Jefferson nickel depends heavily on condition. Circulated coins without special features are worth little more than face value, but uncirculated pieces, especially in higher grades like Mint State 65 or above, are worth considerably more. The market becomes especially competitive for those scarce. Full steps nickels. A single MS-67 full steps example can bring thousands at auction, making it one of the most sought-after coins of the decade. In studying the 1958 nickel, we are also reminded of the broader collecting trends of the time coin. Collecting as a hobby had surged in the mid-20th century, partly fueled by the 1930s and 1940s, when Americans could still find older coins in circulation. Collectors began assembling Jefferson nickel. Albums looking to fill every year and every mint mark slot, the 1958 coins would have been picked out of circulation by young hobbyists and saved in cardboard folders. These early acts of collecting helped preserve some of the higher-grade examples that survive today. When we consider rarity in numismatics, it is not just about how many coins were struck, but about how many survive in top condition with full detail. The 1958 Jefferson nickel is a perfect example. Millions were minted, yet very few are prized by collectors because so many were spent worn down or weakly struck. This paradox is what makes numismatics fascinating. A common coin becomes rare when measured by condition quality and historical context. To fully appreciate the 1958 nickel, one must look not only at its design and rarity, but also at the person it honors. Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was a visionary who drafted the Declaration of Independence and who expanded the United States through the Louisiana Purchase. His belief in education, agriculture, and liberty defined early American ideals. The Jefferson nickel was intended to keep his memory alive in the daily lives of Americans in 1958. Every exchange of nickels was a small reminder of Jefferson's enduring legacy. Collectors today continue to search rolls of nickels from banks and dealers in hopes of finding a high-grade 1958 specimen. Though such finds are rare, most unsearched rolls from the 1950s have already been examined over the decades. Yet stories still circulate of lucky collectors discovering uncirculated pieces in old hoards or estate sales. The thrill of the hunt is part of what keeps the Jefferson nickel series popular. So when we reflect on the 1958 Jefferson nickel, we are reflecting on much more than a small piece of metal. We are reflecting on the craftsmanship of the mint, the economic conditions of the nation, the legacy of Jefferson, and the enduring pursuit of collectors who value history, beauty, and rarity. In equal measure, it is a coin that links the everyday transactions of the past to the passionate study of the present, and it remains a vital chapter in the ongoing story of American coinage.